Hey, honey.
Yes, Barry?
Let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Fascina el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin ti naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I'm your host, Barry Kessler, and I'm so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination. Hey, maybe it's even yours, and that's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. That music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants. Those are the Lapa Lapa, Puerto Vallarta's oldest restaurant on the famous Los Muertos Beach, and the El Dorado Restaurant and Beach Club right next door. So you can enjoy that fantastic view of the Los Muertos Pier, all lit up at night in beautiful colors, or during the day in its grand splendor for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, seated with your toes in the sand right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week, we're going to get down and dirty. We're going to be meeting a guy named John Benus, and John's going to be talking trash with us. John's got a program in Puerto Vallarta. It's called Guerra Contra la Basura, Puerto Vallarta, and it's a war against litter. And according to John, it's the only war where no one gets hurt and everybody wins. But before we get to John, let's see what's happening in Puerto Vallarta this week, the 20th of February, 2021. Things have returned to normal on the ground, at least for now in Puerto Vallarta. The restrictions requiring restaurants and bars and nightclubs and taco stands to close at 10 o'clock in the evening have been lifted. Bars can now stay open until 3 in the morning. People can now go shopping. If you're past the age of 60, it's okay now. The Rona won't come and get you. Theaters are even open with limited capacity. Masks are still required, of course. Proper health protocols and all of that are still being required and adhered to on the ground in Puerto Vallarta. All they need right now are tourists. And according to my friend Salvador Estrada, your friend and my friend, the Candyman on the Malecon, the marathonista in the wheelchair, he sends me video clips of sunsets and of the pirate ship shooting off fireworks, and during the day when he sits there on the Malecon, and he shows me how really quiet it has been at night and even during the day. Like I said, talk about beating crowds. You got to get down there. Come on. Now, last week, we talked about how Canadians are going to need to check into a COVID-19 motel at one of 4 points of entry into Canada. They're going to have to take a PCR test upon landing after they, take a PCR test before they take off. And then they get to hang out at a COVID-19 motel for as long as 3 days while, you Canadians wait for your results. And that might cost you up to 2,000 Canadian dollars, according to what the reports were. And we were wondering if the courts would delay this planned start of the program, but it looks like it's going to begin on Monday, the 22nd. And as it turns out, it's not going to be nearly as expensive to jail Canadians as first was suspected by the Prime Minister. Here is an article claiming that the tab isn't quite as steep for you Canadians who dare to escape the sub-zero cold and opt for, some vitamin D, the natural kind, and some vitamin T, tequila, and some vitamin R and R, which can be found in Puerto Vallarta. We can all use that. But here is the article from CBC Online. mandatory hotel quarantine rates far lower than $2,000, a figure offered by the government. This article is by John Victor from the Canadian Press. The cost of the mandatory 3-day hotel quarantine that goes into effect on Monday appears to be well below that $2,000 per person price tag cited by officials when they announced the new program. Nightly rates at the Alt Hotel Toronto Airport and the Sheraton Gateway Hotel at Toronto Pearson International Airport, two of the hotels named Friday as participants in the government quarantine program, start at $339 and $319, respectively, for a single person being quarantined, employees answering the phone at the hotel said. Those rates include all costs associated with the quarantine, including food and security, the employees said. At the Calgary Airport Marriott Inn Terminal Hotel, the 3-day quarantine stay for one person costs $1,272 plus tax. That includes food for 3 days and $75 for security, an employee said. There are 11 hotels that have been approved, and the government released Friday a list of the 11 hotels where air travelers will be arriving in Canada, and they can complete their mandatory quarantine period at one of those hotels, or Motel 19s, as I like to call them. So, anyway, as of Monday, all air travelers returning from non-essential international trips will have to isolate in one of the approved facilities at their own expense for up to 72 hours while they await the results of a polymerase chain reaction test, commonly known as PCR test, taken upon arrival. Travelers must also produce negative COVID-19 results from tests taken 72 hours before boarding their flights to Canada. And meanwhile, here is an article about how some Canadians actually plan to deal with the COVID-19 motels. This is also from the CBC Online, and it says how some Canadians plan to circumvent Ottawa's new hotel quarantine requirement. No hotel stayed required for travelers who are returning by land. Some Canadians abroad plan to change their route home and cross the border by land instead of by air in order to bypass Canada's pricey new hotel quarantine requirement. If I can avoid it, I'm going to do it, said Brian Cross of Burlington, Ontario, who's spending the winter with his wife Anne in Mesa, Arizona. The couple originally planned to fly back to Canada in April, but that was before the federal government announced last week that, effective Monday, most air passengers entering Canada must take a COVID-19 test upon arrival and spend up to 3 days of their 14-day quarantine at a designated hotel to await their test results. They can leave earlier if their results come back early, it says in the article. Travelers must foot the bill for their stay, which could cost up to $2,000, according to the government. But the hotel quarantine rule doesn't apply to travelers entering Canada by land, inspiring some like Cross to revise their plans. Common sense says that, well, let's do the path of least resistance, right? If I can save $4,000, why wouldn't I, he said, estimating the total hotel bill for 2 people. If the hotel quarantine rule is still in effect when Cross, age 63, and Anne, his wife 61, return home in April, he said they plan to fly to Buffalo instead of Toronto. Then they'll take a cab to the Rainbow Bridge land crossing and cross over at Niagara Falls, New York, and walk across the border into Niagara Falls, Ontario. Cross said a couple of friends have agreed to drive his car to the Canadian side of the border and leave it there for him. We'll just pick it up and drive home, he said. Cross and his wife will still have to adhere to other measures designed to curb the spread of COVID-19. As of this week, land travelers must show proof of a negative COVID-19 test at the border, and starting Monday, they must take another test on arrival, a third near the end of their 14-day quarantine. Man, these testing companies are just making bank. But anyway, there will be no hotel stay, which Cross argues is unfair to people who are flying home, but obviously he doesn't care. So it seems to be getting cheaper and cheaper by the minute for you Canadians to be naughty and dare to vacation during the pandemic. It's only been a week. Who knows what it's going to be like next week? We'll find out. Anyway, I have a link to that article in the show notes. Go ahead and check them out. You know where to find them at www.puertovallartasravelshow.com. The Mermaid Queen is going out of business. Got some sad news from Robina Oliver. She's hanging up the bathing suits, and she's going to be going out of business. She's having a going out of business sale, a liquidation sale. Let me read from her post here. Our final liquidation sale through the end of March. All regularly priced items are 30% off with cash. Items previously reduced are an additional 20% off with cash. Please understand these discounts do not apply to credit card sales. Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. until 4 and Friday by appointment. And remember that she's over at Juarez 174, at least for now, over in Centro, Puerto Vallarta. And if you're in town, get on down there during her open hours or make an appointment and buy some swimwear. It's almost free, folks. And we're going to miss you, Rabina. We're going to miss our mermaid queen, the Serena Reina there. Arte Viviente. We've talked about Arte Viviente. It is a co-op, a big art co-op, and it has moved. It's really actually a remarkable collection of locally made art, beautiful paintings, jewelry, clothing, all sorts of stuff. And now they are moved to the corner of Libertad and Matamoros, right in central Puerto Vallarta. It's a great spot. It is a lovely building. When I was in town, I had dinner over at Coco Tropical with my buddy Marcia Blondin. She writes for the PV Mirror, and Marcia, she writes a weekly column called From Here. And she's beautiful, and she's smart, and she knows a whole lot about what's going on in town, which is why I have at least one meal with her every time I am in town, come to visit. And anyway, she told me that they were getting kicked out of their old building over at Arte Viviente, and they had found a new place to move, and she asked me if I wanted to see where it was. And so after dinner, we walked on over there, and it is a perfect place for that co-op. Anyway, make sure that when you're in town, it's 4 stories, it's four floors, but it's a cool building. And like I said, it's right smack in the middle of everything. So they have the coolest artists that they represent there. And now it's just in such a handy spot in everything. All the art that you would ever want to find, Puerto Vallarta is right there, just in one spot. So I have an interview with Marcia in the queue. Hers was one of the ones that I just got back, along with my recorder, the one that I lost in the backpack in the bus, and it was just returned to me last month. So I'm going to probably have to update that because she's moved, or they've moved, I should say. So I have a feeling I might have to update that one before I run that. Anyway, Arte Viviente, they have a new spot. Check them out. Now, I solidified my plans to come back to Vallarta. May 8th through the 18th, got a killer deal through Airbnb. One of my favorite places right across the street from Meño's Place, over on the corner of Calle Honduras and Bolivia. 10 nights, $256.76, so like $25 a night. And round-trip air from Los Angeles on Delta, $244, for a whopping total of $500.76, and that's for air and room. So, you can't stay home for cheaper than that, folks. And of course, it doesn't include food. It doesn't include transportation around town or drink or weed or anything like that. But, wow, it is really, really affordable. If you can get down here and do Airbnb, totally cheap. And I don't know about your air flights, but this was incredibly cheap. So in Puerto Vallarta, there is a fuel shortage right now. Propane, natural gas, that kind of thing. They're having rotating blackouts throughout Jalisco and actually all throughout Mexico, and it's all intertwined with the situation in Texas, believe it or not. Texas, if you haven't been sleeping for the last week and a half, you know that they had a 200-year snowstorm, and if you are listening and you are in Texas right now, I hope you're doing okay. Hope you're thawing out because I know that you're freezing down there. Anyway, your senator, he hightailed it down to Mexico for a little bit of fun with his family. Thank goodness he chose Cancun over Puerto Vallarta. I mean, that's all I got to say about that. But Senator Cruz isn't the problem. It's the Texas governor, Governor Abbott, actually, who ordered exports of all natural gas and gas byproducts that are produced in Texas. He ordered all exports to stop immediately, and he ordered all that gas to be redirected to Texans who were being affected by the loss of alternate energy sources. Wind turbines froze, solar was stunted, and they had other problems associated with the cold freeze. So anyway, they fired up some power plants to supplement the electricity for the grid in order to get some electricity and some energy to the people out there in Texas. But this caught Mexico totally by surprise because Mexico depends on natural gas from the United States and mostly from Texas for its survival. 80% of the natural gas that Mexico needs to power up their power plants actually comes from the United States. And so in the meantime, they're just surviving on whatever else can come out of the United States that's not coming from Texas. And they're putting together what they can there, but they're firing up some coal-burning plants down in Mexico. And they're doing what they can to fill in the gap. They're doing like some rolling blackouts. And the order from Texas is going to expire tomorrow, the 21st of February. And after that, the natural gas should start to flow once again into Mexico. But boy, it really shows that big weather events like the ones that we had in Texas really have a global impact. I mean, that really affected the entire country of Mexico. Buses are not running at full capacity due to this natural gas shortage in Puerto Vallarta as a result of all this. Out of the 200 buses that are serving the city, 25% of them, 50 of them, were sidelined last Thursday, and they are actually resorting to firing up some of the older diesel-fueled ones that are in mothballs or doing what they can to fill in the gaps there as well. And on top of everything else, restaurants and local residents are having difficulty finding propane anywhere in town. Kind of like last year, I guess. Just different circumstances. Anyway, small world, isn't it? There is nothing like a Puerto Vallarta sunset. It really is. It's unlike any other. If you've seen one, you would agree with me. And I live in Southern California, and I'm just minutes from the beach, so I get great sunsets all the time here, right there. Sun setting in the water, but they're just not like Puerto Vallarta sunsets. They're not as intense. They're not as colorful. And you know why? Well, it's because of air pollution. Shh. Yeah, it's the smoke. It's the smoke in the atmosphere that makes Puerto Vallarta sunsets a little bit different than, regular sunsets. Even though most of us don't really see this, about 80% of rural Mexicans, or about 27 million people that live in Mexico, depend on wood fire to to cook, to heat their homes, and to perform other household tasks. And that particular dependency on firewood leads not only to deforestation, but much of that cooking is done indoors, where the ventilation is very poor, and people, especially women folk and children folk, are exposed to wood-burning smoke every day for hours, many, many hours at a time. And for some, it's like having to smoke, 2 packs of cigarettes without that pesky high. And these ladies are, they're making tortillas, they're doing their daily chores. And if you've ever been in one of these rural Mexican homes, and I have, then you'd know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's soot on the walls, there's smoke working its way out of a little hole in the roof or a chimney, or other little openings like windows or openings where windows should be, or maybe through little spaces and, between slats of primitively built house. This is what you come across when you are in Mexico. And next week, I'll tell you a little bit about a group who came into town, into Michoacan and a little town called Purépecha, and they set up 4,000 of these special stoves. They're called Petzari brick ovens, and they did a study of the health and air quality after they brought these stoves and these ovens into this town, and it's very interesting, and we're going to talk about it next week. But anyway, when the natural gas and the propane are in tight supply along the bay, you really do get the reddest sunsets, I gotta tell you. And now you know why. Now, last week, I promised you that I'd tell you a little bit about AMLO, about the president of Mexico. And I told you that if you were interested in learning a little bit of Spanish, that you should listen to one of his daily conferences, his news conferences that he holds. They're called Mañaneras, and as I mentioned, that Mexican and American politics have become similar, and with leaders, of course, pointing fingers at big tech and big media, and anyway, let me read you some portions from this article from Slate Online describing Obrador and his daily briefings by Laura Martinez, January 28th, 2021. Every weekday, Andrés Manuel López Obrador hosts a notorious 7 in the morning press briefing, which is broadcast live on public television and is streamed on a dedicated YouTube channel, as well as directly on the president's official website. The event, which takes place at Mexico City's National Palace and is attended by a few dozen reporters, is known as La Mañanera, which is also Mexican lingo for a morning sexual encounter. But unlike real-life mañaneras, these can go on for up to 3 hours and are usually far from gratifying. The article continues. Nobody knows for sure how many people watch La Mañanera on a daily basis, but the president's office estimates it's somewhere around 10 million people. More important than how many people watch it, though, is that, much like Donald Trump's tweets, remember those? AMLO's morning show sets the nation's agenda for the day. His announcements and claims reverberate on social media, dominating each news cycle until it's time for the next show to air. And as of Friday, January 22nd, the 67-year-old president, who only took office on December 1st, 2018, had held a whopping 543 mañaneras. AMLO's mastery of media is an unappreciated part of his political success, playing to a similar populist anti-elitist beat as Trump did, though at a lower, less narcissistic volume. AMLO has chastised Mark Zuckerberg for shutting down Donald Trump's Facebook account after the assault on the Capitol. The Mexican president called the Facebook chief arrogant and self-important and said private companies shouldn't be in the business of censoring opinions. He went as far to compare censorship on social media to the Spanish Inquisition. Controlling the day's narrative is the point of AMLO's show. Claiming the mainstream media often ignores or misrepresents the truth, he has effectively used what is ostensibly a press event to instead bypass the traditional media's gatekeeping. Just like Trump used to do on Twitter, AMLO uses the mañaneras to personally confront or denounce his enemies, namely the power mafia and the posh media, or prensa fifi, as he likes to call it. The marathon sessions are packed with sympathetic journalists, essentially pro-AMLO YouTubers who cheer him on when taking on the more established members of the media sprinkled throughout the audience. And the president is masterful at dodging tough questions when they do make an appearance, launching long, winding monologues that often trail off without a point, and he never fails to blame his corrupt predecessors as the source of most of the country's problems. Whether he's talking about censorship, vaccinations, or national security, AMLO never seems to lose his cool. He speaks very slowly, as your Spanish one high school teacher might have, using a warm, low, tentative voice. Foreign correspondents have told me that they found his Spanish very easy to understand, and I can see why. It feels like a word a minute. He can take forever to finish a sentence, which is especially infuriating when the sentences can be long, airy monologues about morality, honesty, or fighting corruption. He uses colloquial language and plenty of refrains to better reach ordinary people. And I have a link to this article in the show notes. I found it very interesting that when Obrador took the 2 weeks off during his mañaneras, he had the Secretary of the Interior, a lady, Dr. Olga Sanchez Cordero. She stepped in to do him. And funny thing, she had the same speech pattern as he did, just exactly the same. It was like hearing a female version of Obrador. Anyway, just shorter, about 45 minutes instead of 2 to 3 hours. And no, I don't listen to all 3 hours. Are you kidding me? I got a life. I got houses to sell. Come on. All right, let's get on with our interview, shall we? One of the many things that my wife notices on those occasions when she actually does come with me to Puerto Vallarta is the trash. It really bothers her. It's one of those things that she tells me keeps her from wanting to move here. Now, one day I got an email, and it was followed up by a phone call from a guy in Puerto Vallarta. He said that he was given my information by somebody over at the city, and they told him to contact me and that I'd get the word out about what he does and what his project is. And his name is John Benus, and John has begun a project in Puerto Vallarta, one that he's actually done before. So he's replicating it in Puerto Vallarta. It's called the Guerra Contra la Basura, or the War Against Litter. Now, I had planned to go up to Talpa de Allende. We talked about this before I took my latest trip, but my many trips over to El Tuito and to Maito put an end to my plans to take a day and go up to Talpa de Allende, which is not too far from Puerto Vallarta. But this guy, John, is going to tell you about Talpa. He knows about Talpa. He did this program that we are going to talk about in Talpa de Allende before he came here. But he knows how to get there, and he knows the great places to stay. So this is almost as good as me going up to Talpa de Allende. So it's a twofer, right? It's the trash and it's Talpa. So let's go right now. Let's go to a table. Let's go back to a table in the middle of one of my favorite restaurants that I like to hang out at in Puerto Vallarta. Nacho Daddy, that's right. Last week we had Jimmy on at Nacho Daddy, and this week I have John on at Nacho Daddy. So let's talk some trash. Let's talk some trash with John Benus and the Guerra Contra la Basura, Puerto Vallarta, the war against litter in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Let's go right now. John Benus. John, thanks for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and what was your path that brought you to Puerto Vallarta?
Well, basically, I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Lived most of my life in California, and always came to Puerto Vallarta for vacations, usually about 2 weeks or 3 weeks a year for the last maybe 20 years. My first time here was back a long time ago when there was a dirt road from the airport. So I have a little bit of experience on the changes here and how the environment has changed. But I still decided to move here. And the last vacation that I took, I ended up in Talpa de Allende. And when they announced the COVID pandemic in the States and how bad it was and what was going on there, I decided to do something I wanted to do for a long time, which was a War Against Litter campaign in Talpa. Now, Talpa, most people don't know, has 3 million visitors a year. That's almost the amount it goes to Disneyland.
Wow. So
they bring a lot of trash, and it's usually a seasonal thing, which is during Semana Santa, the months of February, March, and April. So my partner and I, Margaret Yates, decided to stay and do this campaign. Well, long story short, we finished the campaign after about 6 months and came to Puerto Vallarta to go back to the States. And the tourist office here, just for me to go in and say hello, his name is Ramon Leone, said, "Hey, John, why don't you come back and do it here?" I thought to myself, well, I just finished 6 months. Well, anyway, long story short, I'm back here in Puerto Vallarta and decided to move lock, stock, and barrel to Puerto Vallarta. So now I'm here for the duration of this campaign and also to clean up Puerto Vallarta, which is a place I live, and I also adopt a highway for 17 years in California.
Okay, so John, how'd you get started with collecting trash? Where'd that all come from?
Well, I guess it came from my grandparents, but it passed down from generation to generation. But what really got me started was when I was a younger man and I had the opportunity to be a regional manager of Westin Hotels. The government of Venezuela had 12 hotels they needed management, and Westin took over. So I went down on a fam trip to all the different hotels, which were boutique hotels. And one of the islands that I ended up on and decided to move back to was Margaret Island, where there was more goats than people. It wasn't even on the map at those days. So I went from the three-piece suit to the bathing suit, and I spent only $20 a month for rent. So I could stay there a long time without really having to be stressed out with food or beverage. And when I started promoting Venezuela and Margaret Island, I moved to Margaret Island, as I mentioned, and 86% of the people that came as tourists loved the island, loved the people, loved the food, but 86% would not go back to Margaret Island. So in those days, which was in 1999, I decided to do a War Against Litter campaign. That was my first Guerra Contra la Basura I did with the help of the government, with the help of the local people and sponsorships. And we had 500 students from the hotel school that were my volunteers. So I had instant volunteers. All I had to do was raise the money for the uniforms, the shirts and the hats, and the pickers. So that was my first really step into litter and cleaning up. My background has always been tourism, so tourism is one of my main focuses and why I wanted to promote Puerto Vallarta and the back roads nearby here. And I decided to do the cleanup. It was easy in Talpa to decide to do it there, and then here in Puerto Vallarta, it's definitely needed. According to most people, that's the biggest issue people have.
So Margarita Island, I had never heard of Margarita Island. Now, you said that people wouldn't return. That's because there was too much trash?
Just because of the trash. That was
really? That was it? So you cleaned up the island?
Well, yeah, we did a good cleanup there, and we lots of support, as I mentioned before. And I also, after that, became Director of Tourism for Venezuela. And that gave me more reason to promote tourism to Margaret Island and to the area that I had just cleaned up.
Yeah. All right. So tell us what's Margarita Island like? What are the people like? Are they're Venezuelan? Yes.
Yeah.
And
mostly fishermen. Probably I would say there were more centenarians in Margaret Island than anywhere else in the world. And I remember meeting many of them. They had as many as 10 to 14 children because there's nothing going on there besides drinking beer and eating fish. Good combination for having kids.
Yeah. No TV, obviously.
Yeah, and there were more goats than people when I first moved there.
Yeah.
And there was so many goats on the island that if you were driving down a highway, and the goats came near you, there'd be probably 200 to 300 goats crossing the road. You'd have to wait 10 or 15 minutes for all of them to cross the road. So that's where I was living, and that's the island I started, which now is very famous. If you look on the map, you'll find Margaret Island just off the coast of Venezuela. And also, it's a very famous windsurfing area worldwide.
Excellent. All right. Now, the campaign is Guerra Contra la Basura, and that's war against trash.
Litter. War against litter. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
either one.
Okay.
It works.
And when you were in Talpa, what did you do?
Well, in Talpa, I started from the beginning. First was to get sponsors for the equipment, the hats, the pickers, and the T-shirts, and the bags. The government actually was very kind to me. The government of the president of Talpa de Allende offered to match all the funds that I got from my patrocinadores, or sponsors in English. So that was a big help. He also provided 50% of my lodging. So that was a great asset and a reason to stay, and was able for me to be a volunteer, since my average income per month in my Social Security is only $600 a month, and half of that now goes to my rent. The other half goes to food, and the rest is leisure time when I can.
Yeah, a whole lot of fun with whatever is left, right? With the $1.50 that you got left there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I got to take you out to dinner, it sounds like to me. So let me ask you. Okay, so you got pickers, you got volunteers. How do you? This war against litter. How do you go about it?
Okay. Well, that's good. Good question. We have phases of the war that we do. The first phase, of course, is to send out a declaration which says to people, by signing this declaration, I confirm or agree not to throw trash, litter in streets, rivers, beaches, or vacant lots in Mexico and in Puerto Vallarta, of course. So we're planning on getting 150,000 signatures, which will be distributed by the presidents and leaders of the colonials. As we get volunteers at the same time, we basically are looking for 15 to 20 volunteers per colonial to do the actual cleaning, which we provide all the hats, the T-shirts as a thank you, and we provide the pickers and the bags. So that's the first phase. The second phase is actually to do the actual cleaning, which is with these volunteers, and anywhere from 3 to 4 hours of work. We have the pickers so they don't have to touch the trash, and they don't have to bend over. So that's the good news for them. And in Talpa alone, myself and Margaret picked up over 6 tons of litter just ourselves.
Whoa.
So that gives you some idea of the amount of litter that was there, and we hopefully will maybe beat that record here.
Yeah. So it is not. Now I know, like for example, a lot of people complain about the garbage collection system here in Puerto Vallarta. You're not involved in that at all. You're involved in picking up the litter that is around that people throw and trash out, right?
Yeah, it's basically to show what a clean city, street, or vacant lot looks like. Obviously, for the last 50 years, people have not seen that, even though they've been coming here. But it's getting better with the beaches, but it's getting worse in the inland, as everybody knows. So the main thing is there's going to be a phase at the end of we do the cleanup to have signage which tells people not to throw trash, and also to have containers that are specially made that can't be stolen, turned over. And that's one of my designs that I've created after seeing so much litter and how it's been abused. One of the main things in education is we're going to be doing an animated video that's going to be for adults and children, which will have the birds, the animals, the fish, and tortugas and so forth, telling us what we're doing, how we're killing their habitats and how we're killing their children and themselves, and what we can do as humans to help it be better for them and us.
Ah, cool. All right, and so you're starting with the kids. And the adults, obviously.
Yes, obviously. We want to There's a brief history I'm going to give very quickly of why there's litter. Okay. Our great-grandparents in this country or other countries mostly had things of wood and of metal to make food, to cook food, or to eat out of. And in the past, those things like clay and wood could be thrown in a river, could be thrown in anywhere, and we'd be disintegrated in a few years. Now, for instance, to a bottle of glass, any type of bottle of glass now takes over 4,000 years or more to dissolve and disintegrate into the earth. So they haven't. That's just one example of how much of a problem it is when this litter is not being picked up or taken care of. Recycling is another story. That's a whole different thing. Starting the education process for people to recycle is probably primary, as well as the education to the kids not to throw the litter. So there's several phases of the campaign that are needed to help win the war against litter.
So, recycling. You are going to be encouraging people to do kind of the same thing that we do over in California, for example, separating the garbage from the recyclables from the paper, kind of a thing. Is that your idea?
Yeah, that's also part of the program. Like I said, in one of the designs that I have for the containers, how they'll be funded was they'll be funded by the local either individuals, organizations of that particular community that will be the guard dogs of the containers. Okay. Even though they're going to have 40 kilos of cement, and very difficult to walk off and take to your farm.
Ah, okay. So that's how you do it, huh? Yeah, you weigh them down, make it so that they can't just pick it up and move them easily. That's good.
And that takes care of the rats and the dogs and the cats getting in as well.
Oh yeah, because they
can't turn it over.
That's right. Oh, excellent. I mean, how are you doing this? How are you raising funds to do this here in Puerto Vallarta?
Yes, I don't know if it's appropriate. I'd like to mention some of the sponsors, if it's
sure,
okay.
Of course it's appropriate.
Okay.
Let's tell the world.
Sure. Well, here's some of our sponsors, which we want to thank, of course, because without them, we wouldn't be able to get the uniforms and the pickers and the T-shirts to give the people who are volunteering to do this cleanup. So first I want to mention is Carl Timothy from Timothy Real Estate, Sarah England from England Real Estate, Vallarta and Nayarit, Miguel Rivas from Century 21, Brock Squire from Coldwell Banker, La Costa Realty, Sophia from the group La Palapa, and Raul Pavon from Comex, who will be supplying paint and also helping with the container purchase at this beginning stage.
Excellent. I'll have all those donators, all of those wonderful people.
Sponsors.
I'll have those sponsors in the show notes, and I'll even link up their website. So that'll teach them for being so nice.
Great, and obviously we could use more help as far as the sponsorship goes. So if you do want to, at the end of this interview, I will give you information on how to reach me and how you can be a sponsor or donate.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, we love what you're doing here at the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show, and we will get back to that. Let's go out in the town. Let's do that first before we get back there. Let's talk a little bit about places that you like to go to eat. What's your favorite breakfast spot?
My breakfast spot is at home.
Is at home.
Home, yeah. But my favorite lunch and dinner spot is Planeta Vegetariano, which is about a half a block from the church, which has very healthy vegetarian food and soy products that taste like beef.
Oh, really? All right, I got to get over there. One of these days, I got to get over there. Maybe interview them. Do they speak any English over there, or is it all Spanish?
Yeah, the owner speaks a little English.
Okay, good. All right, I'll go talk to Vegetariano, Planeta Vegetariano.
And it's a buffet.
Very good, very good. And what about dinner?
Dinner, I was going to the Los Arcos buffet for dinner many times, but they just changed that, so I'm looking for a new place.
You are? Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'll help you find one. I'll help you find one. You know, there's all kinds of ideas here in my show notes here at the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show, so you can check those out. If you had a day off and you were going to go somewhere and come back the same day, where would you go?
That would be to Maito, which is in the Cabo Corrientes, which is just south of here, about 2-hour drive. It's got the longest beach I've ever seen. It's about 13 kilometers long with nothing on it. It's a turtle reserve, and there's nice and good places to stay if you want to stay overnight, but I just go for the day.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Maito is a lot of fun. And do you drive there? How do you get there?
Yes, if you find someone with a car, it's best. You couldn't take a taxi; it'd be too expensive. But I've heard there is a bus or van that goes there once a day from like 6 in the morning till a return maybe about 4 in the afternoon.
Oh,
so
really?
It's kind of a short time. It's better to have a car to have flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I do have I have a driver that takes me down there from a taxi guy, and he charges about 600 pesos each way. So it gets expensive, but not, you know. I mean, what, 600 pesos each way? 600 pesos is about $30. So it's about a $60 to get my buddy Javier to drive you from El Tuito to Maito. So not too bad. How about a 3-day? Where would you go if you had 3 days off?
Well, if I had 3 days back, I would go back to Talpa de Allende. I love that town.
Tell us about that town.
It's a town that is more of a religious retreat for people called Pellegrinos, and these 3 million people that come, they come from all over Jalisco and other parts of Mexico to come and worship during the Semana Santa and Holy Time to the church. And as they enter the church, as they enter the town after this trek of 50 or 100 miles, they have bands that they hire that come through the street with the group that's just been doing the hike. And it's kind of a very festive atmosphere with all 6 or 7 bands going down the street every afternoon that these people pay for to celebrate the arrival.
So it's a lot of music, huh?
Yeah. But Talpa has a lot of charm. Good place to stay. There's probably the largest horseshoe making factory in all of Jalisco is there, and that's an absolute must for tourists or for anyone.
Really?
Plus they have a mud brick factory as well, which is another interesting point that I take people to if I go there myself, and that's where they make bricks by hand with the mud from the horses stomping and adding their straw and a little bit of the poo-poo from the horses, and they make the bricks for the surrounding houses to be built.
Wow. All right. And so they're famous for this being a religious retreat, and I understand they've got they got a virgin there, right?
Yeah. And they also have taffy. If you go into town, coming into town, you'll smell the taffy. So the taffy is their biggest industry in the city itself. So about 8 or 10 taffy places you can go to and see them actually making and cooking the taffy from the fruit all the way to the final product. And
so that's really cool. So there's some great places that you can kind of visit and learn a little bit about what goes on there.
The
right?
real Mexico.
Yeah, the real Mexico. And then to get to Talpa, you have to...
I got the way to get to Talpa.
All right, well...
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to go to San Sebastian, Mascota, or Talpa, there's a company here called Lunatran. I don't have the number in front of me here, but For 200 pesos, you can go from Puerto Vallarta all the way to Talpa de Allende in a clean van. Usually the driver speaks English, and it's a great ride. It's only about 3 hours or less, and you'll be in another world.
And I'm going to get that information from you, John, because I'm going to go there this trip. So I'm glad that you told me about that. That's fantastic. I'll have that information in the show notes. So, you could possibly now. Does that van? It comes and goes. You can
Yes.
take it back the same day.
Either way, it drops you off almost close to downtown, and it's usually a 7 to 14 passenger van, very clean
And do they?
and punctual.
Yeah. And what's the last van out of Talpa?
Out of Talpa, I think they have one at 6 o'clock. It's the last one back to Vallarta.
Excellent. All
I'll
right.
give you that information specifically.
Excellent. Yeah. That sounds like a whole lot better than taking that bus, you guys. And of
The
course,
bus is 190 pesos.
yeah.
Which would you travel on?
I'd take that van in a second. In a second, no doubt about it. All right. Well, that's a great tip. So you have to go through Mascota to get to Talpa. So tell us what you know about Mascota.
Oh, Mascota. Okay, Mascota is a more of a farming and agricultural town. I like to stop there on the way if I can, if I have the time, stay there overnight even. And from Mascota, you can go up to some colonial towns that are about maybe 20 or 30 miles away inland on a nice cobblestone road that is travelable easy by car. And you can go to the oldest, one of the oldest silver mining towns called Navidad. And that area is also very famous for its raicilla. So they have several raicilla distilleries on the way that you can stop at, and they're very friendly.
Excellent. All right, great. All right, so Mascota for your booze. If you're gonna skip San Sebastian for your raicilla, you can catch it over in Mascota. All right, so that's pretty cool. Any other little places up there that we don't know about? Any other little towns that I don't know about?
Well, they have the also thing they're famous for in Talpa de Allende is their chiclets. And there's actually a chiclet tree which makes a sap, which they make they make decorations of small sombreros or flower arrangements all out of chiclet. And that town is called La Cuesta, and that you can also get there by bus from. It'd be an overnight stay to go to La Cuesta, which is going southeast about maybe 2 hours drive. It's called La Cuesta, and that's where they have the coffee. They have some coffee, very famous coffee there, cacao, and this famous chiclet, and a few hot springs in that area too. So it's
Nice.
Could be an overnight.
And obviously there's lodging, there's places to stay up there?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Wow, all right. So that's a place I've never heard of. And now I got to go. Now you said chiclets. You're not talking about the gum, are you?
Yes, you can chew it.
Oh, you can. So you can eat the artwork.
Well, I wouldn't eat it, but I would chew it.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you on that. If you had a word of advice for a first-time visitor to Puerto Vallarta, what would it be?
That's an easy one. When you cross the streets, look both ways. Even if it says one way or you see the traffic going one direction, look both ways.
Yeah.
Very important if you want to be having a good time and not stay here for the rest of your life underground.
That's right, because there's people that are driving the streets that might not even know that it's a one-way street. They might have had a little bit too much to drink. It could be any number of things, but you are absolutely right. Look both ways. And with that in mind, also remember, when you get out of a taxi, when you get out of a cab, get out of the cab. If you're going to get out of the cab where you're going to be stepping in the street, you better watch where the traffic is coming from behind you, or get out of the cab on the street
get
side.
off on the curb side, yeah.
Exactly. That's important stuff. How about if you have a word of warning, other than looking both ways? You got any words of warning?
Yes, absolutely. When you go to a restaurant or you go to any place that has sauces, you better ask them how hot each sauce is before you try it, because if you try the wrong sauce, you won't be able to taste your meal at all.
Absolutely right. Yeah, you don't want to numb your tongue and make your taste buds go, "What happened here?" That's a great.
That's a really good tip.
Great word of advice. Yeah, ask. They'll tell you.
Yeah, they show different colored types of salsas, but you ask them which is the hottest, which is the mildest.
Right, and in Spanish you want to say picante, menos picante, más picante. So use picante for the hot thing. They'll tell you. All right, let's get back to the war against litter.
Yeah.
How will people contact you? How will they be able to donate? And you're not asking for volunteers, are you?
Yes, we're still looking for volunteers. Yes, we have about maybe 200 volunteers at the present time, but we have over probably 75 colonials in the city of Puerto Vallarta that we have to cover, and we plan on doing a colonial maybe one or two a week. So it's going to keep us busy and the volunteers. And yes, we could use more volunteers. Feel free to contact me on my landline, which is from the United States. It's 415-331-0100. I'll repeat it, 415-331-0100. If I don't pick up, just leave a message. I get all the messages, and I'll contact you to tell you how you can either support us by being a sponsor, or if you're down here, you can be a volunteer.
Excellent. All right. And I'll have all that information in the show notes. Of course, you know where to find it. You can find it at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. And look up the war against litter, or the Guerra Contra la Basura de Puerto Vallarta. And I will have John's smiling face. You'll be able to see what John looks like. And John's going to send me some pictures of the kinds of things that they did up in Talpa.
And also we're going to I'll send you pictures about the people doing the volunteering here and picking up the litter here.
Excellent. All right, great. And I'll have those in the show notes as well. And I think that what you're doing, John, is incredible. One of the things when I come to Puerto Vallarta with my wife, one of the things she says is, "Can't they do something about the trash?" And look at you, man. You're doing something about the trash. I love that. So, I love you. Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show today, and thanks for sharing your advice and your project with my listeners. I truly appreciate that.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be on the show, and I'll look forward to hearing from some people that want to volunteer, be a sponsor, and thanks again.
All right. Thank you, John. I have pictures, I have links, and I have John's phone number. All that stuff is in the show notes, and of course, you know where to find those. I also have links to the great sponsors, and if you want to become a sponsor of this project or a volunteer, go to the show notes, like I said, and you'll find them there. Now, John also has a hiking and backroad adventure club, and I have a link to that too. And he also has written a couple of articles about Talpa de Allende, about getting there, what to do, and he's got a 3-day where to, what to, where to eat, where to stay, things to do, expensive transportation to get there. It's all in one article that he actually wrote for Vallarta Today, and I have a copy of it in the show notes. And you can find them in the blog, in the blog and podcast section on the tab over at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. Click on that and look for the Guerra Contra la Basura, the war against trash in Puerto Vallarta, and you'll find them there in the show notes. Now, speaking of inexpensive transportation, did you hear what John lives on monthly? Did you hear that? Did he say $600 US? Wow. Now that, my friends, that is another episode, isn't it? All right. That should do it. That should do it for this week. Next week, stay tuned for more on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with travel tips, great restaurant and excursion ideas, and more. But until then, just remember that this is an interactive show. where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. And if you think of something that I should be talking about, well, please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, and thank you for doing this, you need to go to vallartainfo.com, that's JR's website, and reserve your tour through him right from his website. Remember that this is a value for value proposition. This is an exchange of ideas, his knowledge about everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you were going to use someone else. So do it, really. And when you do take one of those tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And don't forget, he's got his maps, his DIY tours, his revitalized happy hour board, and more. And I have links to all of those in the show notes. And once again, if you like this podcast, please take the time and subscribe and give me a good review on iTunes or wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast. That way we can get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And remember, I made it easy for you to do just that with each episode I create. But if you haven't been to my website, you really need to have a look there. I have links to the places that we talk about. I've got interesting pictures and more right there in the blog post and in the show notes for each episode of the show. So check them out for sure if you haven't already. All right? All right. Thank you so much to John Benus and his fight against trash, the Guerra Contra la Basura. I have links and I have contact information for John, as well as pictures of John's projects, both in Vallarta and in Talpa de Allende. Get involved. Donate money or time for this very, very interesting project. And if you're interested in, taking that van to Talpa or Mascota, well, check out that info in the show notes too. And thanks to all of you for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler, signing off with a wish for you to slow down, be kind, and live the Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
Solo camino, perno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río, cuando todo está en calma, pronto cae la noche, brillas Puerto Vallarta.